Hey guys, we're back. So we have some ground to cover now. Okay, so just bear with me because this is going to get a little bit crazier now. All right. So first of all, let's go ahead and get rid of this here. Let's clean this up a little bit. So I'm just gonna clear these page title. Yep, get that out of the way. The app component, that's fine. Page title. Okay, so this is what I wanted to clear off. I wanted to get that out of the way and go to the home component itself and take that about click out of the way as well because I'm not gonna need it. This home click thing, let's just leave that for now. And same thing, just in here, just leave it right now, just so we can reuse it later. We can rename it and put something else inside the function, and we will. So that's eventually gonna toggle a form to create a task. But we don't have form yet, but we can always reuse it later. So literally, let's leave that alone. But what we're going to do now is we're going to create the tasks down here, the actual tasks that exist today, right? So couple of things. Let's start off first by adding in the app folder a file. So let's just create this new file here. What are we going to call this? Test data. We're going to call it data. We're going to call it data. So we're going to call it data and just JavaScript. Just JavaScript, data JavaScript. And in there, I'm going to make sure that I bring this from, well, let's first declare it. So let's export it so we can use it somewhere else. And const. And then we're going to call it tasks data. Let's just call it tasks, like this, tasks. All right, and equal, and then there's going to be an array of tasks in there with objects. So an array of objects, and each object will be a task in itself. Now I'm going to bring this in from somewhere else, copy it, and then you yourself are going to just basically pause the screen or whatever, and make sure you type yourself. All right, cool. I might not add this to the yeah, I will. I'll add this to the comment section and below, so that if you don't want to type it, just look down and then copy and paste it in here, this particular one. All right, so anyway, so we're gonna add these tasks right here, so that way they exist for us and we can use them as data. Okay. Now, the one thing that we also need to do is, because we're dealing with JavaScript here, is we are going to create an interface or a model, so to speak, or a schema also. So now the schema is very important for many reasons. One, it's great for TypeScript because it protects the data object that you have, so that way you're always using this exact properties inside your object, and you're not just nilly-willy adding stuff to it later and creating more conflicts in your code. Instead, TypeScript is going to look back at the schema and say, you need to follow the schema, you need to follow the template of what a piece of data looks like. Okay, so that's also always a good thing. So what we're going to do is also at the app level as well. I'm going to create another file. Actually, no, I'm not going to create a file. I'm going to create a model, a folder. Sorry, let me back out of that. Back out. Okay, inside the app folder. Okay, I'm going to create a folder called models. Now, why a folder? Why not just a model? It's because in many applications, and I want you to get used to creating the folder instead, in many applications you can have more than one model, okay, more than one schema. So in this one, it's going to be for tasks, but you're going to have applications where you're going to need a piece of data to produce users for you, or services, or I don't know, whatever, like different kinds of things. So you have a model for what the API that is going to give you users look like, and an API for whatever services API you're going to get is going to look like that. So each piece of an API that you're getting back and produce its own data with its own properties, it's going to need its own model. So this is where in here you collect all of these models inside model folders, so you don't have them like spread around the place. You have them all inside one folder. Organization is key. Remember that part. All right, so we're gonna now inside there create our first model, which is going to be basically just called task. Yeah, so we're gonna call it tasks.js. Cool. All right, so now what does a model look like? So first of all, as always, we gotta export it so that it can be used somewhere else, and it's going to be called interface. Okay, so the interface then is going to be called whatever we want to name it. In this case, it's going to be task, and it's singular, not plural, because we want it to be the model of a single task, not the model of many tasks. Okay, so the model of a single task. And then here we're going to specify what these piece of state, what each task piece of data should look like. So it's going to have an ID, and that ID is going to be a number. IDs should be numbers. So this basically protects that particular that particular piece of data from being misused and as a string, for example, or a boolean or something like that. You want it to always be an ID of number. Sorry, integer. Right. That's what I was told. All right. So the next one we're going to use is going to be text. Right. Let's look at the data for a second. For ID, text, day, and reminder. So so the text is going to be a string. Right. So this will protect that data from ever being displayed as whatever, like a boolean or something like that. Making sure that this is not, like that. And then the next one was a day. It's also going to be a string. See that? Alright, so my linter here is messing with me, so make sure that you're having it in lowercase, okay? And then finally the reminder, which is going to be a yes or no, right? It's going to have a little checkbox that is going to be clicked on to remind yes or no. So therefore, if it's a yes or no, it's a boolean. Alright, making sure that I don't get a thing. Yeah, cool. Alright, now one thing that I also want to add is there's something called optional operator, which I can add it there as well, which I will. And I want to add that to the ID because once I create a task, I made the ID itself is not going to be available for us when we're creating a task. That gets created later by the backend. So we don't want to force our code to create an ID when it doesn't need it, because the backend is going to do it. And if we don't make it optional, then basically whenever we do create a task, JavaScript, TypeScript is going to say, hey, you need to define an ID or this won't happen. But you can't. You want the backend to create the ID. So in order for TypeScript to ignore that you don't want to send the ID, you want to create the ID upon submission, you make it optional. That way TypeScript says, oh, okay, you don't really care that you're not defining an ID on the creation of a single task, therefore I won't ask for it. Go ahead and send the test, the day, and the reminder, which I do expect those to have content in it. Okay, the reminder, that's tricky. You will think, yeah, but what if I don't want a reminder? Wouldn't that be the same thing as not declaring it? No, yes, whether you want a reminder or not, you're still declaring something. You're declaring a yes or a no, which is a true or a false. So in either way you declare it, you submit it, you're gonna submit it as a 1 or 0, true or false, yes or no, right? It's not the same thing as an ID. An ID is a number. It doesn't have two possible yes or no. It's infinite. So that's a different thing. All right, so let's go ahead and save this. What is going on here? So interface declaration can only be used in TypeScript files. Duh. Okay, so rename this. That's why it was giving me those uppercase over here. It was reading JavaScript. All right, cool. So sorry about that. And let's see. With that said, this data.js here also needs to change. So let's rename that and make it TypeScript. Okay, cool. Alright, so now that we got this going on, we're gonna go ahead and move on a little bit, and let's see what we're gonna do then next. So I'm trying to read what we did in our React application example, so that we know, so that we basically just do the exact same thing that we did. Alright, so I guess the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna create the actual tasks component. Alright, so and just like we did over here at the in the early stages, we're gonna go back up, and then we're gonna go not to the pages but to the components. Yeah, because this is not gonna be a page, this is gonna be a component. So right there where it says components, we're gonna create, no, actually we are going to, where do I want to do this? In the home component, inside pages, inside home. Okay, so we're gonna create a component. Actually, you know what? Yes, let's create it inside the pages here. All right. Let's make sure that I am using it in the right place. Alright, so yeah, so right here inside the pages there is a pages, and then there is a home. Yeah, there you go, home. And then inside there, that's where I'm going to create my tasks. Okay, there we go, tasks. Yeah. Alright, just making sure that I'm organized in the right way. So that's going to create a folder with all my tasks files inside the home page, but in its own folder. So that's still gonna look organized. All right, let's see if that's true. So it created it. So now we go to the home. There you go, task, and then there's my normal home components right there, but then there's my task right there. So that's good. So let's open that task TS, and we're not gonna use CSS, so we get rid of this, and we are also not going to use the app thing. I mean, at least I'm not. So now we can come over here and delete this guy. Cool. Alright, so I have my task component, and now I can come to my home component where I'm usually underneath my page title. I am going to use home. No, not home. Tasks. Is that what I call it? Tasks. Alright, and now I should get TaskWorks. That's good. We're on track. We're on track. All right. So now that we have that task component, so let's just go ahead and close this and close the app component. All right. One thing that I wanted to show you about this task interface, or what I meant by protecting your data, if I wanted to, like for example, add a new property here called name, for example, and then just name that whatever, Lewis or something like that, then this would eventually fire up something like wrong, an error, because this right here doesn't exist inside this property doesn't exist inside the tasks object right here. So this, you will eventually see that if that's where, if that's how you wanted to upgrade it, you will have to add a name inside the tasks interface here. So now that we are in a component for task, we're going to then create our first task component. So the first thing that we want to do, let me see. So if we are, oh, you know what I didn't do was I didn't bring in here import. That's what it is. Import my task from model task right there. There you go. All right, so import my task from model task, and then I'll make sure that my task. All right, let's see. All right, yeah, and then I'll make sure. Okay, so this is how how you protect the task with the interface. We created the task somewhere else. We created that interface. That's the schema. That's the model. That's what protects this particular data from being corrupted with pieces of props that are not belonging to that schema, to that interface that you created. Sorry, I'm sorry I had to come back to this, but I was getting ahead of myself because I was going too fast. But what we want to do is we want to create this task right here, just like we do in other places where we put, for example, string like that. We declare that something is a string. This one we can do that type of type scripting as well, where you type script it to a particular type, and in this case it's going to be a type of task, and make sure that it's an array. So by doing so, you are basically saying that the task right here should mimic or should mock whatever this instruction that is coming from here, this interface looks like. So now if I use something like name and name it Lewis or whatever, now it won't let me. It will say, I'm sorry, but the name right here, the name string, this is not assignable to a type task. Basically it doesn't exist. For it to exist, I will have to come over here and add name string to this, and then it will be able to work. All right, good. So now that we're in good shape, we can continue on. So now we're going to the task component, home component. Yes, to the home component. No, the task component, sorry. So now we're going to the task component, and the task component is going to be the one that is going to use this data that I created in the task data, or the data TS file, and be able to absorb it so that we can deploy it here where it says task works. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to import the model itself. So that's going to come from, that's going to be import task from the first one right there, from model task, right? And then we're going to then bring the data as well. So that's going to be, what is it called? Data. It's not that one. Data. Oh, the name of it. I named it task with that right there from data. There you go. So now I'm bringing both of these files in here. I'm importing them both so I can use them. So I'm bringing in this guy here, and I'm bringing in the interface so I can follow along. All right. So the first thing that I need to do is I need to make sure that I declare what type of object I'm going to be working with, or I should say what type of data collection point I'm going to be working with. All right, so the first thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to create a data collection point, and I'm going to call it tasks. Okay, now this could be called anything you want. I can call it task and call it my tasks. In fact, I'm going to call it something different so it doesn't get confused, because I'm using tasks like in a lot of places. I want you to make sure you know which task means what. So in this one, it's going to be task collection, tasks collection, task collection. Yeah, let's name it task collection, and that's going to be of type task. Okay, so I'm basically saying that what I'm declaring which type is going to follow. It's going to follow the task model. All right, and then that's going to equal my tasks data that is coming right here. So now all of this data that is inside here, all this stuff in here, is being assigned to this task collection here. So it's available to me for me to use pretty much anywhere I want. So so now with that already in place, then now I can come back to my tasks HTML where it says task works, and now we can go ahead and say, for example, and import here what the task, let's say for example the text, right? I'm going to import the text in there. So how we do this is we're going to use a another Angular directive that is available for us, and it's called ngFor. And what that does is basically it's a map directive, and it maps through the data. Excuse me. allergies. It's going to map through the data, and it's going to say basically task. Sure, we'll call it task. Yeah, let's let task for task collections. Okay, so what we're doing here basically is we are making sure that, I mean, not for, sorry, of, let task of task collections, and it wasn't collections, was it? Collection of task collection. All right, so let task of task collection. So basically what it's doing is creating an item for each one of the items that is found in this collection. In here it's going to create, it's going to make one item of it, and then I'm going to say then tasks name. I think it's double string interpolation, and Angular requires 2 of them. So now if I circle, if I map through them, let's see what happens. Okay, so we have nothing. Oh, because it's not names, sorry, it's text right there. Yep, task test, and I go ahead and voila, you got it. So it's basically going through, it's picking up a name, so each one of these is a task. So that's a task, that's a task, that's a task, and then it's creating, go ahead and create a task item for each item inside the task collection, and then append to it or bring back the value that is inside the property text or the text property. And it's basically gonna go to the back end over here and make sure that that task collection exists, and that is assigned, that is type scripted, and it will follow along and say, okay, that's what it's gonna equal to, and it's gonna find it in here, and then it's gonna come over here, and then it's gonna find all of each test, and it's gonna put 3 of them because that's how many it found, and it's gonna find the values for each of them, and it's gonna put them there. Simple enough. All right, so in the next video we're going to now structure the actual task element, and maybe even break it down into even smaller, like an actual single task component. Just because we did that in React, we're gonna continue to do it here, and then we can see how the data will flow back and forth from different levels of parent, child, grandchild, and then back up again through the components. So but let's do that later, and let's just stop it for now, and I'll see you guys later.